He used to call me his safe place. Then he made sure I had nowhere left to go. I've been painted as the villain, the liar, the one who broke the family. But the real story? It's uglier than anyone wants to admit. And once I say it out loud, there's no going back. She's lying, Dad. She's always hated me. The way those words dripped from her lips, it wasn't just a lie. It was poison. Her smirk was razor-sharp, the kind of smile that cuts deep and leaves scars. Her eyes sparkled with fake innocence, her voice trembling just enough to sound believable. And him, my husband, the man I once trusted with my entire world, he just stood there, watching me. Not with love, not even confusion. But with quiet, cold suspicion, like I'd already been found guilty of a crime I didn't commit. Hi everyone, my name's Alina. And if there's one brutal truth I've learned, it's that betrayal doesn't always come from enemies. Sometimes, it comes wrapped in the familiar warmth of someone who swore they'd love you forever. You'd think that years of marriage, of building a life brick by brick, would mean something. But all it took was one evening, one whisper from a spoiled 20-year-old, for everything to collapse like it was built on sand. That night is burned into my memory in fragments. The living room light was harsh, almost surgical. The silence felt like a weight pressing down on my chest. His face, stone cold. Alina, just, pack your things. I can't do this anymore. His voice didn't shake. Mine did. What are you saying? You're throwing me out because she said something? But he didn't answer me. Not once. He just looked at her, his daughter, with the same soft, unconditional love he once reserved for me. And in that instant, I understood something painful. I wasn't his priority anymore. I wasn't even his choice. The walls of our home seemed to echo with laughter that wasn't mine. Loyalty that wasn't his. And the cruelest part? He never even asked what really happened. No defense. No second chance. Just exile. I packed in silence. Every sweater I folded felt like a tiny funeral. Every pair of shoes in my suitcase was a piece of my life being erased. And when the door slammed behind me, the night air hit my face like a slap, icy and unforgiving. I stood there on the porch, suitcase in hand, my marriage lying in ruins behind me. And from the window, I could see her smirk. That triumphant, poisonous little smirk. But here's the thing about the world, it has a way of keeping score. And their debt was heavy. 3 weeks later, when he came crawling back, acting like nothing had happened, asking if I'd reflected, if I was ready to apologize and return like some obedient pet, I didn't just walk away. No. I made sure they both felt the weight of what they'd done. That night wasn't my ending. It was my beginning. The first week was brutal. I stayed in my friend's spare room, lying awake at night, staring at the ceiling like it held the answers. How could years of love collapse in a single breath? The silence felt like it was pressing against my ribs, suffocating me. Every time my phone buzzed, a small part of me hoped it was him, saying he'd finally opened his eyes. But it never was. Instead, what I got were her posts. Pictures. Snide little captions. Digs meant just for me. Some women need to learn their place. She wanted me broken. And for a little while, she succeeded. But pain has a funny way of sharpening you. The more I replayed that night, the clearer it became. It wasn't just her lie that broke everything. It was his choice to believe it. His silence. His betrayal. By the second week, something in me had shifted. I wasn't crying anymore. I wasn't screaming. I was just still. Cold. Steady. The version of me who begged to be loved died the moment he shut that door. That's when I began to plan. I pulled out a box I'd kept tucked away for years, filled with documents. Property records. Bank statements. Proof of every contribution I made to the life we built. He thought I'd walk away with nothing. He thought he could erase me like I was a footnote in his story. But he had no idea who he was dealing with. The third week felt strangely calm. I woke up early. Cooked my own meals. Wrote in silence. Each sunrise made me stronger, colder, more certain. And then, he showed up. There he was at the door of my friend's apartment. His face painted with guilt, his voice soft, almost rehearsed. Alina, he murmured. I think we both need to reflect. Maybe, it's time you apologize and come home. The audacity. He really thought I'd crawl back. Like nothing had happened. I felt a slow smile curve on my lips, not the desperate kind he was used to. Calm. Deliberate. Controlled. Actually, I whispered, pulling out the envelope I'd prepared days earlier, I've got something better. And that was the moment everything shifted. I did reflect. His hands were trembling as he unfolded the paper. Divorce papers. For once, the one who had slammed the door on me was the one left out in the cold. He stood there, staring, jaw clenched, eyes flicking between my face and that single bold word at the top, divorce. He let out a laugh, but it was thin and broken, the kind people make when the ground disappears under them. Alina, this is ridiculous, he said, voice trying for reason but sounding like a man clutching at air. You're upset. We don't need to go this far. I leaned against the doorway, arms folded, quieter than the night. My voice didn't shake. You believed her without ever asking me one question. You packed me up like trash. And now you want me to apologize? He raised his voice then, the panic lacing through it. She's my daughter, what was I supposed to do? Ignore her. Those words sliced straight through me. But underneath the sting there was a terrible clarity. Of course she came first. Of course I'd never been equal in his eyes. I was never the partner he'd sworn to protect. I was convenient, temporary, an arrangement that could be tossed aside when the mood struck him. I stepped closer. Lowered my voice so he had to lean in. You were supposed to be my husband. You were the one who promised to know me better than anyone. In that moment, something shifted in him, not sorrow, not regret, but fear. Not a fear of losing me as a person, but fear of losing the life I had helped build, the routines, the security, the bank of little comforts that felt like the scaffolding of our marriage. He looked away from me and for the first time really looked at what I'd been, the woman who ran the household, who handled the bills, who kept the everyday chaos from unraveling. That look, pale, startled, was a crack in the armor of his certainty. Alina, don't do this. Let's just talk. I let the silence answer him. My silence was loud enough to drown out his pleading. Then, timed like a cruel encore, she appeared. His daughter slipped into the doorway behind him, arms folded, the kind of posture that says, I won. Her face was a mask of smug triumph. Finally, she sneered. She's leaving for good. Dad, just let her go. Her words landed with a clatter, but they didn't sting the way they once would have. If anything, they stoked something cold and precise inside me. I could feel the tiny fissures spreading through their alliance. The smile that had belonged to her turned brittle, his expression, for the first time, looked unsettled. Her triumphant grin did not calm him, it made him fret. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. I leaned in so close that my whisper might have been mistaken for wind. You'll regret this. Then I closed the door. Their voices floated down the hallway, his muffled scolding, her sharp retorts, like a song I'd heard too many times. For the first time since that night, their perfect father-daughter duet sounded off-key. I braced myself against the wall, inhaled, and for the first time in weeks my hands did not shake. My chest didn't ache. I felt a strange, cold calm settle in me. Revenge, I decided, wouldn't be ablaze. It would be ice, slow, methodical, and inevitable. Over the next days I moved like someone who'd rehearsed every motion in her head 1,000 times. I met with my lawyer, an old friend who understood the look in my eyes without me having to explain it. We went through the mountain of paperwork I'd quietly kept, mortgage documents, bank transfers, contracts, investment statements. The small, invisible things that, stitch by stitch, made up the life we'd built together. He had always minimized my contributions, helping out, he called it. But the papers told a different story. My name was threaded through every ledger, every asset, every investment we had parceled out like a shared dream. And the business, his pride and late-night obsession, wasn't just his. I'd backed it when it was nothing but a napkin sketch and a hopeful grin. I had the receipts, wire confirmations, contracts with my initials on them. Legally, I wasn't some dependent wife. I was a partner. A silent partner who had been underestimated and then discarded. That silence was over. When he caught wind of what I was doing, he tried to scramble. Calls that went to voicemail. Messages that I left unread. He even appeared at my friend's apartment again, the same script of guilt and pleading playing on his lips. But I didn't answer. Each unanswered ring was a small, satisfying confirmation he no longer owned my voice. His daughter, on the other hand, couldn't resist performing. She took to social media, snide posts, name-calling, petty stories designed to paint me as bitter and grasping. Every public barb only revealed her own insecurity. She believed that if she shouted loud enough, she could rewrite the narrative. Instead, she laid bare how thin her victory actually was. The real triumph, though, wasn't the legal paperwork sliding across a table. It was watching their perfect little coalition begin to splinter under its own weight. The court papers landed like a storm. My lawyer delivered them with the precision of someone who knows how to break things cleanly: division of assets, a clear accounting of contributions, claims filed, bank freezes, property reviews. I imagined his face when he read each line, the way smug certainty would crack and then crumble. He had expected a simple playbook: throw her out, wait until she begged, then dangle forgiveness like bait. What he hadn't counted on was that I had no intention of crawling. I was climbing. He watched as the foundations he assumed were unshakable were pulled out from under him. 2 days later, I saw him standing outside the courthouse. The man who once controlled everything now looked like someone bargaining with a stranger. Alina, please, he said, the desperation raw. Think about everything we built. I looked him in the eye and said, exactly. We built it. Not you. Not her. I'm taking what I earned. His daughter was there too, arms crossed, lips a thin, ugly line. You're just greedy, she spat. You never loved him, you only wanted money. I almost laughed. It would have sounded absurd if it hadn't been so painful. Funny, I said, I'm not the one who lied to ruin a marriage. She lunged, stupid, impulsive, but he held her back, frantic and low-voiced. Stop. You're only making this worse. Worse. Yes. Things were about to get worse for them, and not just in the way they imagined. My lawyer's filings moved with clinical efficiency, accounts frozen, assets flagged, legal claims that made their control evaporate. For the first time, he wasn't calling the shots. He was scrambling to respond. Power had shifted. Every time his daughter screeched online, the sound told me she felt the same helplessness that tightened his jaw. But the sweetest part didn't come from the legal victories. It came from watching their little fortress, built on loyalty and unquestioned trust, start to fissure from the inside. He blamed her for the lie. She blamed him for weakness. Their unity, which had been the weapon used to exile me, was now the thing tearing them apart. And I wasn't done. Because this wasn't only about reclaiming what was mine. It was about engraving into them, in a way they couldn't deny, the cost of what they'd done. I had taken their certainty and turned it into uncertainty. I had taken their safety and put it under review. I signed the final papers with a steady hand. I filed the last document and watched the courier leave. I smiled, not the desperate, pleading smile he once knew, but one that felt like the closing of a long, cold plan. But what I did next? I didn't announce. I didn't brag. I set one more thing in motion, a quiet move that would make sure they never mistook me for disposable again. I locked the file cabinet, took a breath, and for the first time since that night, I slept. When morning came, their world was different, and they didn't even know the half of it. And I wasn't finished yet. What I did next would be the thing they'd never see coming. Court started like stepping into a cold theater where everyone waited for the act that would finally expose the truth. Each session, I watched the man who had once flatly told me to pack my things shrink a little more. The confident posture, the swagger he used like armor in our living room, was gone. Now he sat slouched in an ill-fitting suit, sweat beading at his temples, answering questions that clawed at the tidy story he'd built. My lawyer moved through him with the gentle force of someone breaking glass, precise, inevitable. Emails, bank transfers, signed contracts, things you can't charm away, stacked up like stones on his chest. Whenever he tried to make my role look like support or helping out, the paperwork slid across the table and showed a different truth. My name, my signatures, my money woven through the business like a seam you couldn't cut without unpicking the whole garment. With every revelation, he looked smaller, less like the man who'd given orders in our kitchen and more like someone caught in his own flimsy construction. And there she was, his daughter, every hearing. Like clockwork she'd perch in the back row, arms folded, lips a permanent scowl, an audience of one waiting for my collapse. She wanted me to feel unseen, to vanish under her glare. But the more she sat there, the more the gallery noticed the sourness in her face. People leaned in, whispers like soft leaves. Why did she always look so tense? So furious? For once, I felt the room watch her as much as they watched me. The real break came in cross-examination. My lawyer asked the simple, terrible question, did you remove your wife from the marital home without any discussion or proof of wrongdoing? He stammered. He looked toward his daughter like she might hand him an answer. She sat there, ivory jaw clenched, incapable of saving him. On that stand he was alone, stripped of the chorus that had always backed his claims. He choked on the choices he'd made, his throat worked but no rescue came. I didn't smile. I didn't need to. My silence filled the room louder than any victory shout. Later, as I left the courthouse that day, she followed me to the parking lot, voice dripping the same venom she'd used in our home. You think you've won? You're pathetic. My dad will never forgive you. I turned to meet her. The night air smelled like exhaust and wet pavement. I held her gaze, steady as a heartbeat. He doesn't have to forgive me, I said. But one day he'll see who really destroyed his marriage. For a beat, her smirk faltered, tiny, almost invisible. Then she whipped her head away, fury rearming itself. I slipped into my car, the leather was cool and secure against my palms. As the city lights smeared across the windshield, something like peace settled over me for the first time in ages. This wasn't just a courtroom fight, it was a slow unraveling of the fortress they'd built behind closed doors. And I hadn't yet delivered the final act. Word traveled in small, inevitable ways, through mutual friends, through a text that said, he's asking questions now. The blind trust that had once wrapped them together turned brittle. He started asking about late-night calls, about whose voice she answered, about why stories never quite matched. The neighbor heard him one night, furious enough to make the windows rattle. You ruined everything. He shouted. The war spilled into the open. She yelled back. The alliance that banished me was becoming a public spectacle, and I watched from the sidelines, letting them dismantle each other. The second hearing was the tipping point. The judge recognized what the papers had already shown, my financial contributions, my stake in the business, my right to half of what we'd accumulated. The verdict landed like a verdict should, clear, unarguable. His face went that terrible ashen color people get when the rug is pulled out from under them. His daughter stormed from the courtroom mid-hearing, her exit slammed a door so hard it echoed like a punctuation mark. That night I got a message from him, short, raw. Helena, please. We can fix this. Let's talk, no lawyers. There was a time I would have scrambled to hold on to those words. This time, they felt hollow, like a script he'd read too many times. I didn't answer. Instead, I and my lawyer executed the move I'd been planning in quiet, my shares transferred into a trust. Not an ordinary trust, one that funded scholarships for women who'd been left, silenced, or stepped over. Every dollar that left his ledger became a seed for someone else's beginning. My pain, I decided, would become other people's chance. When he discovered this, the rage that followed was volcanic. Friends told me he'd blamed their collapse on his daughter, yelled at her for pushing him to this point. She fired back, shrieking that it was his fault for ever marrying me. Their fortress, so secure when it had used them as a wedge against me, crumbled into ash. I stood that night on the balcony of my new apartment, the city spread below like an ocean of small lights. The cool air wrapped around me, the glass railing under my palms was solid. I hadn't merely walked away, I'd rewritten the ending of the story he thought he owned. The last hearing felt less like combat and more like a funeral for his pride, his control, his sense of entitlement. The judge's gavel closed things that could not be reopened. I walked out with my share, more importantly, I walked out free. He sat in the courtroom with shoulders collapsed, eyes rimmed red. His daughter hovered at his side, fury replaced by thin, anxious muttering. Their world, tidy, unquestioned, fortified by a blind allegiance, had splintered, and neither of them had the map to put it back together. When everything was final, I didn't rush. I gathered my documents with slow, deliberate movements, then walked past him. He looked up, searching my face for pity, for forgiveness, for anything human. I offered none. Outside, his daughter waited. The bravado was gone, what remained was raw and trembling. You destroyed him, she hissed. I tilted my head, the night wind catching a loose strand of hair. No, I said quietly. He destroyed himself. You just helped. Weeks later I heard he'd sold the house, my home, just to cover legal fees. His business, the thing he loved like a child, started to wobble without my steadying hand behind the scenes. She moved out, leaving him alone in a smaller apartment with a smaller life. But even as their world shrank, I refused to watch with bitterness. I watched from a place of hard-earned strength. Because revenge, I had learned, isn't a roar. It's living so fully that your absence becomes the only evidence they have of what they lost. I signed the last papers at the clerk's desk. The woman slid them across with a small, polite smile. It's finalized. I traced the ink with my fingertip, closed the folder, and whispered to myself, it's finalized. That one sentence echoed through my mind louder than any insult, any betrayal, any desperate plea he or his daughter had ever thrown my way. As I stepped out of that courthouse, it felt like a weight I'd been carrying for years finally slid off my shoulders, leaving nothing but clean, sharp air in its place. The breeze hit my face, crisp, almost electric, and for the first time in a long time, it felt like it belonged to me. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I just breathed. Steady. Quiet. Like the storm had passed, and all that remained was the calm after it. For so long, my life had revolved around their chaos, his blind loyalty, her venomous games, their toxic little alliance. But in the end, they hadn't been brought down by me. They'd been undone by their own cracks. I had simply held up the mirror. People romanticize revenge like it's supposed to be loud, explosive, something fiery and wild. But the truth? The real, most devastating kind of revenge doesn't scream. It waits. It cuts with silence. It lets the consequences sit heavy on their shoulders until it breaks them all on its own. In the months that followed, I rebuilt quietly, brick by brick. I signed a lease on a sunlit apartment where the windows drank in the morning light like warmth I'd been starving for. I learned to love quiet breakfasts with nothing but the sound of my coffee cup meeting the table. I found peace in the echo of my own footsteps, in a space that belonged entirely to me. And every now and then, whispers reached me. Whispers about him. How he tried to rebuild, but the business bled slowly without the steady hands that had once held it together, mine. How his daughter drifted farther and farther away, their bond fraying until there was nothing left to cling to. The man who once stood so certain was now just a shadow, learning too late what he'd thrown away. But me? I stopped chasing revenge the moment I realized I didn't need to. My existence, my strength, my peace, that was the victory. Some stories don't end with fiery confrontations or desperate apologies. Sometimes they end with nothing more than the sound of quiet footsteps walking away. And that was exactly how mine ended.